Chapter 1. The Unspoken Offer. The vastness of space was a cold, unforgiving expanse, indifferent to the fragile dramas that unfolded within the cramped confines of the transport ship Celestial Dawn. Lieutenant Adrian Cole sat rigidly in the stiff synthetic chair bolted to the floor, his gaze flickering nervously between the glowing instrument panel and the enigmatic presence beside him. The hum of the ship's engines thrummed like a heartbeat beneath the sterile silence of the cabin, but inside Adrian, his pulse was anything but steady. This mission was unlike any other he had ever undertaken, and the passenger he was charged with escorting was unlike any being he had ever known. She was a gift literally, a living offering from one of the most powerful and ancient alien civilizations in the galaxy, the Zeriath Dominion, presented as a token of alliance, trust, or something far more complex and unspoken. Yet beneath her delicate exterior and the shimmering silks that wrapped her slender form, there lay a question burning bright in her dark, luminous eyes, an unspoken challenge that unsettled Adrian more than any enemy ever had. "I was a gift, human. Why haven't you touched me yet?" Her voice was soft, almost a breath in the quiet, but it penetrated the thick atmosphere of the ship's cabin like a blade. Adrian's heart stumbled, caught between fascination and a deep, unfamiliar shyness. The woman beside him was breathtaking, her skin a subtle iridescent sheen that shifted with the light, her movements graceful yet purposeful. She was Sarina, a Zeriath noblewoman, her features delicate but marked with the stoic dignity of her people, and an aura of something far older and deeper than mere beauty. The Zeriath were a civilization where the exchange of gifts was not a simple diplomatic nicety, but a sacred act, heavy with cultural significance. To be given as a gift was to be entrusted with one's very essence, a living symbol of trust and hope. And now, she was that gift, placed in Adrian's hands with expectations that stretched beyond his comprehension. The journey to Epsilon Prime, a sprawling human colony on the edge of known space, was fraught with tension. Political fractures within the colony simmered beneath the surface, and the arrival of a Zeriath gift was certain to ignite passions and suspicions in equal measure. Adrian's role was clear: ensure Sarina's safe passage, facilitate her integration, and guard her against those who would seek to exploit or harm her. But the mission was also a personal crucible. How does one bridge the vast gulf between two species whose customs, languages, and even physicality differed so fundamentally? How do you navigate the delicate landscape of trust when every gesture carries layers of meaning, and every silence is charged with possibility? Sarina's question haunted Adrian not merely because of its boldness, but because it laid bare a vulnerability and an urgent desire for connection that defied simple explanation. She was not a prize to be claimed or a bargaining chip to be played. She was a being longing to be seen, understood, and accepted. The question was not a demand, but an invitation to cross the threshold of unfamiliarity, to explore the depths of a relationship forged not in conquest or obligation, but in mutual respect and discovery. As the celestial dawn drifted silently through the star-speckled void, Adrian finally met Sarina's gaze. Her eyes held no accusation, only a patient challenge and a flicker of hope. "It's not that I don't want to," he admitted, voice low and steady despite the tempest inside. "It's just, this is new. Your customs, your meanings, they're alien to me. I don't want to hurt what you represent by rushing." Sarina's lips curved into a gentle smile, both soothing and mischievous. "Then let me guide you," she said softly. "Let me teach you that a gift is not possession but the seed of a bond, that touches not just flesh but trust, a promise written in the language of the soul." The silence that followed was charged, electric with possibility. Adrian realized that this was not just a mission through space, but a journey into the unknown territories of the heart and mind, an odyssey where human and alien might find common ground in the most intimate and profound ways. With trembling hands and an open heart, he reached out not to claim a gift, but to begin a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about connection, loyalty, and the meaning of being truly seen. The silence between them stretched, pregnant with unspoken thoughts, as the transport ship hummed steadily through the darkness. Adrian's fingers tightened slightly around the armrest, his mind racing to reconcile everything that this mission meant. He had been a soldier, a man trained in the language of conflict and command, where clarity was power and hesitation a weakness. Yet here, in the presence of Sarina, everything was blurred, the lines between duty and desire, between duty and humanity, between the alien and the familiar. She was no mere diplomat or hostage. She was a symbol of fragile hope, of a promise woven delicately across star systems and cultures that might otherwise never touch. And yet, her words "Why haven't you touched me yet?" echoed with a poignancy that unsettled him more deeply than any battlefield confrontation. Sarina watched him with a quiet intensity, the subtle glow of her skin bathing the cabin in an ethereal light. She had traveled across countless light years, leaving behind the ancient spires and jeweled palaces of the Zerioth Dominion to become something entirely new, a bridge, a liaison, a gift. Her people had long mastered the art of diplomacy through ritual, of forging bonds with the delicate exchange of presence and trust. To them, a gift was never transactional. It was sacred, a living testament to faith and hope between strangers. She understood that humans were different, more cautious, more reserved, but the gulf between expectation and reality stretched wide and raw. "Touch," she said softly, "is not merely physical. It is the beginning of understanding, a language that speaks when words fail." Adrian swallowed, his breath catching. The weight of her gaze was unlike any command he had ever faced. It demanded more than obedience. It demanded courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to cross boundaries he had never dared approach. He had lived through wars where touch meant pain, where closeness was a liability. Yet now, confronted with the possibility of something deeper, something real, he felt the stirrings of a different kind of battle, a battle for connection, for trust, for the fragile threads that bind souls across worlds. The ship's speakers crackled faintly, signaling the approach to Epsilon Prime's orbital dock. The time for hesitation was slipping away like stardust. Adrian's mind flashed to the briefing, the political undercurrents, the rival factions who would see Sarina as leverage or prize, the fragile alliances that might crumble or solidify based on how this gift was received. It was a precarious balance, one that could tip into war or peace with a single misstep. And yet, amidst the swirling chaos of diplomacy and danger, Adrian found himself drawn inexorably towards Sarina's quiet strength. Her hand moved then, subtle and deliberate, reaching out to brush a stray lock of hair from his brow. The gesture was simple, yet charged with meaning, an invitation, an offering, a plea. "Let me show you," she whispered, her voice a melody woven from centuries of tradition and the hope of something new. "Let me teach you that to touch is to trust, and to trust is to live." Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of her hand against his skin, the spark of something ancient and profound. In that instant, the vast coldness of space receded, replaced by a fragile flame flickering against the darkness. He knew that this moment, this choice, would define not just the mission but the path of his life and perhaps, in ways he could not yet comprehend, the fate of two worlds intertwined. The transport ship shuddered gently as it aligned with the docking bay, metal limbs extending to secure it like the grasp of an unseen giant. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, shadows lengthening, and the moment stretched taut, poised on the edge of everything that was uncertain and everything that might be possible. With a steadying breath, Adrian reached out to meet her touch, not as a command, not as a conquest, but as the beginning of a story neither of them could yet tell. In that simple contact was the promise of discovery, of shared fears and hopes, of a connection that transcended species, culture, and the cold expanse of the void. The journey had only just begun. Chapter 2: Learning to Reach Across the Void. The docking bay of Epsilon Prime loomed vast and sterile, a cathedral of steel and light, where the hum of machinery blended with the faint murmur of anxious voices. Lieutenant Adrian Cole stepped from the celestial dawn into a world both familiar and alien, where the rigid lines of human order met the fragile tension of interstellar diplomacy. The weight of his charge settled anew on his shoulders as Sarina followed silently behind, her presence a graceful contrast to the harsh angularity of the station. Every eye that turned toward them was a calculus of curiosity, suspicion, and expectation, an unspoken acknowledgement that she was more than a passenger, that her existence carried consequences far beyond the boundaries of their immediate surroundings. Inside the station's secure corridors, Adrian's thoughts churned with the complexity of what lay ahead. Sarina was not merely a diplomatic gift to be paraded or possessed. She was a living embodiment of fragile trust between civilizations, a symbol of fragile hope wrapped in layers of cultural nuance and unspoken meaning. Her earlier question lingered in his mind. Why had he not touched her yet? It was a question that transcended mere physicality, reaching into the core of human hesitation and fear. For Adrian, touch had long been a battleground, scarred by loss and the brutal lessons of war. To cross that line with Sarina was to open a door into vulnerability, into a realm where trust was earned not by force, but by the patient weaving of understanding. Their quarters aboard the station were modest but private, a sanctuary away from the prying eyes of political factions and media throngs. Here, Adrian saw facets of Sarina that the public never would, the flicker of doubt behind her regal composure, the quiet longing etched in the delicate lines of her face. The glow of her skin seemed softer here, bathed in the muted light, revealing a warmth that defied the cold vastness of space from which she had come. She moved with a grace born of centuries of tradition, yet her gaze held an openness, an invitation to bridge the vast gulf between their worlds. Over the ensuing days, a delicate dance unfolded, a weaving of cultures, languages, and unspoken gestures. Adrian found himself drawn into rituals and conversations that challenged his preconceptions. Sarina taught him the intricate significance of touch in Xerioth culture, how a simple brush of fingers could convey respect, how the intertwining of palms spoke of unbreakable bonds, and how the exchange of warmth was a sacred act of trust and commitment. For humans, touch was often casual or reserved. For the Xerioth, it was a language of the soul, a covenant that shaped destinies. One evening, beneath the artificial twilight of the station's observation deck, they stood side by side watching the distant swirl of galaxies. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the quiet hum of the universe. Sarina turned to Adrian, her voice a gentle whisper that carried the weight of worlds. "You have not yet touched me," she said softly, "because you fear what it might mean. But to touch is to accept the gift of presence, to say I see you beyond words." Adrian reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing against hers in a moment suspended between hesitation and hope. The warmth that passed between them was electric, a spark that ignited the first fragile thread of connection. In that touch, Adrian glimpsed not just an alien form, but a kindred spirit, someone willing to cross the void alongside him, to navigate the uncertain path of trust and discovery. Yet the path was fraught with challenges. Political pressures mounted as factions within Epsilon Prime debated the implications of harboring a Xerioth noblewoman. Whispers of alliance and betrayal wove through the corridors like a gathering storm. Adrian found himself not only a protector but a mediator, tasked with safeguarding Sarina's dignity while navigating the treacherous waters of human ambition and fear. Through it all, the bond between them deepened not through grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but through the steady accumulation of shared moments, a hand held in quiet reassurance, a shared meal beneath unfamiliar stars, the whispered exchange of dreams and fears in the stillness of night. Each touch, each glance, became a building block of trust, a language crafted slowly and deliberately in the space between two vastly different worlds. Sarina's question remained a guiding light. Why had Adrian not touched her yet? The answer was no longer simple fear or hesitation. It was the profound realization that touch was not just a physical act, but a journey, one that required courage, patience, and an openness to change. Adrian understood that in accepting her gift, he was accepting a part of himself he had long kept hidden, a willingness to be vulnerable, to connect, and to embrace the uncertain beauty of the unknown. As days turned to weeks, the alien and the human moved closer, not just in body, but in spirit. Their story was unfolding not as a tale of conquest or possession, but as a testament to the power of empathy, respect, and the quiet revolution of touch. In the vast expanse of space, amid the cold calculus of politics and war, they found something rare and precious, a bond that might one day bridge the stars themselves. Chapter 3. between worlds, between hearts. The corridors of the Epsilon Prime diplomatic sector were cold and polished, a stark contrast to the warmth that had slowly begun to kindle between Adrian and Sarina. The station was a crucible of political maneuvering, a place where alliances were forged and broken with the precision of a scalpel. Yet, within the private quarters that had become their sanctuary, the boundaries of species and protocol began to blur. The gift that Sarina embodied was no longer a mere symbol of political favor. It had become a living testament to the fragile possibility of understanding across the vast gulf of difference. Adrian found himself caught in a tide of conflicting emotions, duty warred with desire, fear with fascination. The culture he had known all his life prized strength and independence. Yet here, with Sarina, he was learning the profound strength in vulnerability, the power in yielding to trust. Each interaction with her was a lesson, a dance of gestures and glances that spoke volumes beyond the limits of language. Her people's rituals of touch were intricate and sacred, imbued with meanings that transcended the physical. To touch was to invite another into the deepest chambers of one's being, to offer not just skin but soul. Sarina herself was a study in contrasts. Her regal bearing was tempered by moments of startling openness, a soft laugh, a lingering gaze, a gentle touch that conveyed more than words ever could. She challenged Adrian to shed his preconceptions, to see beyond the barriers of biology and custom. In her eyes, he glimpsed the vast histories of her people, their triumphs and tragedies, their hopes and fears. And in that shared space, a new language began to emerge, a language of connection and discovery. Their evenings were filled with conversations that stretched long into the artificial night, exploring the nuances of their vastly different worlds. Sarina spoke of the Zerioth rituals that marked the passage of time, the intertwining of hands and silent vows, the exchange of warmth as a promise of fidelity, the sacred dance of closeness that bound families and tribes together. Adrian listened, absorbing not just the facts but the emotions woven through her stories. He realized that what he had once dismissed as ritual was, in truth, the very fabric of identity and trust. Yet, despite the growing intimacy, the question that had sparked their journey remained ever present. Why had he not touched her fully, without hesitation or fear? The answer lay buried in the scars Adrian carried, visible and invisible. War had taught him to guard his heart, to keep others at arm's length lest they be lost. To accept Sarina's gift was to risk everything, to open himself to the possibility of pain as well as joy. It was a leap of faith into an unknown future. One evening, as they stood together beneath the observation dome, watching the endless swirl of stars, Sarina reached out and took Adrian's hand in hers. The touch was electric, a spark that ignited something deep within. Her skin was warm and alive, a bridge between their worlds. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "To touch is to trust, and to trust is to begin a new story, one written not in words, but in shared breaths and beating hearts." Adrian closed his eyes, feeling the weight of that promise settle over him. The galaxy outside was vast and cold, but here, in this fragile moment, a different kind of universe was being born, a universe where human and alien might find common ground in the most intimate of ways. He realized that to truly accept Sarina's gift, he had to embrace not just her, but the unknown within himself. Their bond deepened in the days that followed. Each touch, each glance, a step toward a future neither could fully foresee. Yet the world beyond their sanctuary was unrelenting. Political tensions simmered. Rival factions within the colony viewed the gift with suspicion or greed, and whispers of rebellion stirred in the shadows. Adrian and Sarina stood at the crossroads of destiny, their connection a beacon of hope and a potential spark for conflict. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the station's lights dimmed and the stars cast pale light through the windows, Adrian and Sarina shared a silent vow. They were no longer just human and alien, diplomat and gift. They were something new, partners navigating the delicate, dangerous path of trust and love across worlds. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and promise. But together, they would face it, hand in hand, writing a story that transcended the void between stars, a story of courage, connection, and the transformative power of a single touch. Chapter 4. The Gift Fulfilled. The quiet hum of the station had long since given way to a restless energy, a tension that stretched thin the fragile peace between worlds. Adrian and Sarina found themselves at the heart of a storm not only of politics and cultural collision, but of the deeper, far more intimate turbulence that comes when two souls seek to bridge the unfathomable gap between species, traditions, and hearts. Their journey, born of obligation and shaped by tentative trust, had blossomed into a bond that defied the cold calculus of diplomacy and war, into a connection woven with the threads of vulnerability, courage, and a daring hope that neither had dared to voice until now. In the sanctity of their shared quarters, away from the prying eyes and whispered suspicions of the colony, they faced the most profound challenge of all. The question that had lingered in the spaces between them since the voyage began, the question of touch, of acceptance, of surrender, had become no longer a distant hesitation, but an urgent, aching need. Sarina's gaze, always calm and knowing, now held a shimmering light of invitation and challenge. "I was given to you," she whispered, voice barely above the breath of a galaxy in motion. "Not as a possession, but as a promise. Why do you hold back the touch that would seal that promise?" Adrian's heart thundered with the weight of that truth. For a soldier forged in the crucible of war, to touch was to expose, to surrender control, to risk the fragile fortress of self he had built from years of hardship and loss. Yet, in the glow of Sarina's presence, that fortress seemed less a shield and more a cage, one he yearned to break free from. His fingers trembled as they reached toward her, not in haste but in reverence, as if tracing the contours of a sacred covenant written in light and shadow. The moment stretched, a universe suspended in fragile possibility as skin met skin, a communion of warmth that transcended flesh and whispered of trust and rebirth. The world beyond their door was a maelstrom of uncertainty, political factions ready to tear apart fragile alliances, whispers of war threading through the corridors like venom. But within the quiet sanctuary of their union, a different kind of revolution was unfolding, a revolution of hearts and souls daring to reach across the abyss. As their hands entwined, as their breaths mingled in the soft glow of starlight filtered through reinforced glass, Adrian and Sarina became not just partners in a mission, but partners in a journey toward a future neither had dared imagine. Their touch was no longer tentative but fierce and tender, a dance of discovery that spoke of promises made and kept, of barriers shattered and new worlds born. Sarina's laughter, a melody unlike any Adrian had heard, filled the room with light, chasing away the shadows of doubt and fear. In her eyes, he saw the reflection of a man transformed, a man unbound from the chains of his past, free to embrace a love that spanned galaxies. Days turned to weeks, and the bond between human and alien deepened, a living testament to the power of connection. Together, they navigated the treacherous tides of politics and prejudice, standing as a symbol of unity in a fractured cosmos. Their story spread beyond Epsilon Prime, a beacon of hope that whispered through the stars, inspiring those who yearned for peace and understanding. Yet, the greatest gift was not the alliance forged between civilizations, but the one forged between two hearts fragile, fierce, and unbreakable. Adrian and Sarina had learned that to truly touch another was to accept their entirety, to honor their story, and to embark together on the endless journey of becoming. As the twin suns of Epsilon Prime rose on a new day, casting golden light across the horizon, Adrian and Sarina stood side by side, their fingers still intertwined, their hearts beating in quiet harmony. The galaxy awaited them vast, uncertain, and filled with possibility. But together, they would face whatever came, a gift fulfilled and a promise kept, shining brightly against the infinite night. The dawn light filtered softly through the panoramic window of their quarters aboard the diplomatic station orbiting Epsilon Prime, casting a pale golden hue across the room where Adrian and Sarina sat side by side, hands intertwined with a quiet intimacy that had grown over weeks of tentative discovery. The galaxy outside remained indifferent and vast, unchanged in its endless cycles of war and peace, expansion and resistance, but within this small sanctuary, a different universe blossomed. It was a universe defined not by political machinations or the cold calculus of interstellar alliances, but by the fragile, luminous threads of connection and understanding that stretched across the gulf between human and alien, between duty and desire, between fear and trust. Adrian's gaze rested on Sarina, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the morning light, the subtle shimmer like a living tapestry woven from stardust and ancient tradition. She was no longer the distant symbol of a gift, no longer the enigmatic ambassador from the Zerioth Dominion, but a living, breathing presence who had reshaped his world and challenged the very core of his being. He remembered vividly the moment she had asked the question that had haunted him from the beginning. "I was a gift, human. Why haven't you touched me yet?" It had been a question that cut deeper than any weapon, unearthing fears and vulnerabilities buried beneath years of battle-hardened resolve. For Adrian, the journey toward that touch had been arduous and fraught with uncertainty. The lessons he had learned in the brutal crucible of war, lessons of caution, control, and self-preservation, had built walls around his heart so formidable that even the promise of connection seemed a distant echo. But Sarina had slowly, patiently, unraveled those walls with a grace born of centuries-old rituals and an unwavering belief in the power of trust. Her culture's reverence for touch as an act of deep respect and binding promise had challenged him to redefine what it meant to be human, what it meant to open oneself to another. Now, as their fingers remained entwined, a silent testament to the bond they had forged, Adrian felt the weight and the beauty of that connection settle within him. It was a touch that transcended flesh and blood, a communion of spirits navigating the delicate dance between two vastly different worlds. Their shared moments-long talks beneath the artificial stars of the observation dome, whispered confessions in the quiet of night, the gentle brush of fingertips that spoke volumes, had laid the foundation for something rare and extraordinary. They had moved beyond the roles imposed by politics and protocol, stepping into the unknown territory of genuine affection and shared humanity. Yet, outside their quarters, the world was anything but calm. The political arena of Epsilon Prime simmered with tension, factions divided over the presence of a Zerioth noblewoman in their midst. Some viewed Sarina as a valuable ally whose goodwill might secure peace. Others whispered of betrayal and manipulation, of an alien pawn threatening human sovereignty. The weight of these conflicts pressed heavily upon Adrian, who found himself both protector and advocate, navigating treacherous waters where one misstep could ignite open hostility. But amidst this turbulence, the bond he shared with Sarina became his anchor, a source of strength and clarity. Their union was more than a personal journey, it was a symbol of possibility. In a galaxy fractured by suspicion and strife, the relationship between human and Zerioth became a beacon, a testament to the power of empathy and connection to transcend even the deepest divides. News of their alliance spread quietly but steadily, inspiring whispers of hope among those who longed for a future where differences were bridges rather than barriers. In one of their most profound moments together, Adrian and Sarina stood beneath the sprawling vista of Epsilon Prime's twin suns, the sky awash in shades of violet and gold. The world seemed to hold its breath as they faced each other, the distance between them charged with unspoken promise. Sarina's hands reached up to cradle Adrian's face, her touch gentle yet commanding, an invocation of trust and commitment. "You held back because you feared losing control," she said softly, eyes searching his. "But true strength lies in surrendering not to weakness, but to the courage of connection." Adrian's response was slow, deliberate, as he closed the gap between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both a surrender and a declaration. It was a kiss that spoke of centuries of longing and the breaking of chains, a kiss that sealed the promise she had given and the promise he now returned. In that moment, the boundaries of species and culture dissolved, leaving only two souls intertwined in a bond that defied the void of space and the weight of history. Their days unfolded thereafter in a tapestry of discovery and growth. They learned to navigate the subtle nuances of each other's worlds, the sacred Zerioth rituals that marked time and emotion, the human ways of expression and passion. Each new touch, each shared breath, became a verse in their unfolding story, a story of two beings defying the odds to forge a love that was both gift and triumph. The political storms eventually gave way to tentative alliances. The presence of Adrian and Sarina together became a rallying point for those who believed in a future shaped by understanding and respect rather than conquest and fear. The rebellion of hearts they embodied sparked conversations and challenged prejudices, planting seeds that promised to grow into forests of peace. As their story reached far beyond the walls of the station, Adrian and Sarina remained grounded in the quiet moments, the shared breakfasts in the early light, the laughter that echoed softly through empty corridors, the simple joy of presence. They understood that the true gift was not the exotic allure of one given to the other, but the acceptance of each other's whole selves, the embrace of vulnerability, and the willingness to journey together into the uncertain, beautiful unknown. The galaxy awaited them vast, untamed, and filled with challenges. But together, they were no longer alone. They were a living promise, a testament to the power of trust, love, and the courage to reach across the stars and touch another's soul. And in that touch, the gift was fulfilled.